The bloody conflict in Syria that's been dragging on for almost 2 years and claimed more than 60,000 lives has now entered the realm of internet gaming called Endgame SYRIA. Players get the chance to fight on the side of the rebels, exploring various options to push the conflict to the end. Joining me now in the studio is RT's Yegor Piskunov. Yegor, I don't know if you're a devoted gamer, but you've taken a look at Endgame SYRIA. How does it work?
Well, unfortunately, I can't really allocate as much time for computer games as I would have wanted to, but I did take a look at this marvel, let's call it that. The developers themselves say that it took 2 weeks to develop this game, which is obviously a very little amount of time if you want to develop something with good quality. So there's no actual 3D action. There are no people running around shooting. This is more like a card game, which you can see here. And, well, basically, it's all about seeing the chances of how a situation could work out, kind of simulating a situation of the regime's forces on one side and the rebels' forces on the other side. So it's more like a sort of like a gambling card game online instead of an action game.
So betting who has the best cards to win the Syrian game. This conflict has many dimensions, as we all know, as there's a serious diplomatic standoff going on around it. How is it all going to be reflected in a card game? Well,
the developers said that they put this game together using real media reports from the situation in Syria. They say that it's absolutely based on the real kind of conflict there. So there's also the possibility of, so you can see it here, the political phase. So there's these gambling kind of fights, if you can use, say, military hardware, or you could use political methods. And, well, this is the military one again, but it's quite interesting that it puts, you can put countries that support or allegedly support the regime against, say, countries that support the rebels. There's the option of some Western states supplying weapons to the rebels. All of that is reflected in this game, but, well, what I could say kind of against the statement that it's based on real media reports, it puts countries like Russia among those who openly support the regime, while we always get statements coming from the foreign ministry that Russia does not take any side of this conflict. So that's kind of one of the points which makes you doubt how objective this game really is.
Speaking about objectivity, I mean, like you said in the beginning, that it's not the sort of game you would expect to have 3D and, you know, shootouts and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it may seem insensitive that such bloodshed could inspire an online game, doesn't it? I mean, it seems almost like people are just sort of taking the mickey out of all of this. This is a serious thing that's happening in a country.
It's definitely unethical, and the developers said if people have problems with the term game, then they could call it simulation or an online interaction. But we are talking about thousands of lives which have been lost throughout this conflict, and it's a really serious topic. Making a computer game out of it, I guess it does raise questions into how ethical it is. It actually also gives you the opportunity to for this diplomatic solution for a peace treaty. But actually, the game itself says that even if the player takes this option, does go for this peace treaty, then he wouldn't really gain that much respect points from the rebels. And you're always playing only on the side of the rebels.
So it's almost one-sided. It almost has its own conclusion anyway, whether you go for or against.
You can't take the side of the regime, even if you wanted to see how this simulation would work if you did. So that's...
So how has this been, you know, in terms of the world of gaming? We know that Apple has already rejected it. Do other developers plan to use this as a platform? Are they rejecting it? Is there kind of a sense of it's unethical, we're not going to go there, we're going to keep away from it? What's been the reaction around this?
Well, the game was initially developed specifically for Apple's platforms, and Apple has rejected it due to its policy It's unethical, and it's also, the game is about targeting a specific existing government, which is also against all existing rules of the Apple company. And I'm pretty sure that all the other major IT companies like Apple would have pretty much the same rules about that. But the developers say they are going to try to resubmit this game. Perhaps they're going to, what they said, they're going to change it from the terms game to simulation or whatever. But needless to say, there are many games which do simulate various conflicts. Sometimes these could be these games could go back to the Second World War, to the Cold War, sometimes possibly to some future where even Russia could face off with the United States or the West. These games are quite popular. They're not really card games. They are much better put together, but you can always take either side of the conflict. Sometimes you can even take the side of the terrorists. But it always gives you the choice to see how the simulation will work. This game doesn't give this choice. Obviously, it's really only on one side of
I'm
this
just
whole
thinking,
story.
what is anybody gaining from that? I mean, you know, but I guess those who use it may know better. Igor Piskunov, thank you very much for being with us here in the studio to explain this Endgame Syria.